Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on, guys. We've got here René and we've got Elliot.
Yes.
I met René in at the IDX event recently in Sydney in the flesh, but we already kind of knew of each other through various things. René did the logo for the podcast. Well, worked on
Yeah.
it with. Did you work on the logo independently or worked with other people?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's always a bit of a collaborative thing at Formswell, but yeah, I
Yep.
guess I was the man on the tools for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan, he was on the show a few weeks ago, and
Mm.
yeah, I work with him at Formswell, so
Yeah, that's
yeah, it's
awesome.
good. This is another thing I do of many things, but yeah,
Keep him busy.
yeah, always.
I feel like I don't know why, I feel like it's a designer's thing where you just got to stay busy all the time with some sort of avenue. Like my girlfriend always complains that I've got, new things to do all the time. She's always like, you just need to finish one thing before you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, totally. I think that like interested in lots of different things.
Mm.
I think a lot of industrial designers are like that because, yeah, they're always got all these interesting hobbies, and I think that's probably what draws you to that sort of career anyway. You're sort
Yeah.
of interested in lots of different things and how stuff works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I found out about Furnished Forever through Dan, and he said we should get you guys on the podcast. Maybe just to start off, what brought Furnished Forever together and made it what it is today.
So I guess sort of complementing skill sets
Mm.
is the short answer, but the more fleshed out one. So Rene obviously did an industrial design degree at the University of Canberra,
Yep.
and I did a visual arts degree at the Australian National University a couple of years before Rene. And I guess they're two sort of different courses. Obviously, the visual arts degree that I did was very materials focused. It was a lot of sort of like experimentation, sort of
Mm.
workshop driven sort of criteria. And an industrial design degree, is sort of its own thing. And Rene and I had sort of known of each other's work and of each other just through going to like local exhibitions and things like that. And we were both at a mutual friend's 21st birthday, I think, in late 2016, and we just chatted, and we sort of said it would be good if we could like design a product together, because we
Mm.
have these sort of complementing skill sets,
Yep.
and we didn't sort of excuse me, we weren't thinking about it in a particularly long-term way. We just thought it would be like a fun thing to sort of partner up, and you sort of design something that individually the other person wouldn't have arrived at independently.
Lemonoosh. In case you haven't heard of them, they're a design organization that helps educate designers all around the world so they can stay up to date with the latest software needs so that they can be competitive in this overly competitive design landscape. Full disclosure, I was provided this software free of charge to give my honest, unbiased review of the product. Personally, I found this course very beneficial. Before the course started, I had absolutely no knowledge of Rhino. I'd never opened the software before. I went from that to having a good grasp of the fundamental skills of Rhino and moving on to the more complex skills towards the end of my experience with Lemonoosh. Currently, I've just passed the first major portion of the course and I've already a solid grasp on the software. The course walks you through the basic tools, then slowly progresses you onto the more complex tool set of Rhino. My only critique would be that the tutorials are using macOS, and personally I use Windows, which initially was somewhat confusing as there are differences between the macOS version of Rhino versus the Windows version. But I contacted the Lemonoosh support and they were very helpful and got me back on track, and I haven't had any issues since. In the Rhino course, you will start modeling a basic mock-up pod, then moving on to fully modeling the Nintendo Switch. Next, modeling the Bang & Olufsen Bayo Play speaker, a Google concept, and finally, using the new sub-D tools to model a pair of sunglasses. This comprehensive course is a good step forward in your Rhino learning experience and has given me the tools to work on some key projects that I was looking to move on to once I learned Rhino. Lemonoosh also offers a range of other courses for software such as Keyshot, Grasshopper, Photoshop for industrial designers, and much more. If you're interested, check out the affiliate link in the description, and a small portion will go back to me to help fund the podcast and bring it to the next level. Thank you. Now back to the podcast.
And yeah, that's where there was like the first product that we designed was the sort of a low standstill, but getting to that point, there was a little bit of back and forth. Like I would bring an idea to the table, Rene would bring an idea to the table, just crude little sketches and models and things like that. But it sort of gradually we landed on this form and this design that I think we're both really happy with, and it slowly grew from there. But I guess the origin story was, I guess, a desire to work with someone who can do things that you can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think too, like we see a bit of an opportunity in Australia to be able to do something like this. Like I think there's we're seeing a real need in the market for locally made furniture. You can do it in kind of small batch runs. So I think we saw other people doing this, and I guess we saw a bit of an opportunity to plug ourselves in and do sort of our own thing. One thing we really kind of try and do at Furnished is like it's always commercial, like it's got to be and affordable to make, but then we try to put a bit of an edge to it. There's always a bit of like an art sort of influence in a lot of our work, and I don't know. And it's just fun. Like I think that's why I do it. Like I just think furniture's cool, and it's fun, and I think at the end of the day, that's probably the main thing that's kept us doing this. We just enjoy what we do, and
Yeah, and I guess sort of going back, I forgot to mention that sort of part of the original brief that we set ourselves was, it needs to be made in Australia, but use sort of fabricators and manufacturers that are quite specific to the ACT or the Southern New South Wales region. Like there's some very good industry here, but we don't have, for example, like sort of computer controlled pipe benders and things like that. So like bent tube furniture would be out of the question for us.
Yep.
So, but there are some very good fabricators. So that first product, the Standstill, you'll notice that it's all cut and welded and linished. There's no bent components in it. So we're kind of limited in a way to the industry that we had access to. But I think sometimes limitations, originality and creativity can sort of explode out in ways that you didn't expect.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of different things there. One thing we mentioned a lot on the podcast of is that connection between art and design. And I mean, you guys definitely bring that together just through working together and through collaboration. Like, I mean, a lot of the time designers kind of need to have some sort of artistic flair, I feel like, to be able to create innovative solutions in a way. But having someone who really studied that and focused on that probably really lend itself to, more the visual side than the industrial design to more the practical side, which is probably why you guys, are successful as a team. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, that's great. I mean, I think with fabrication, some people I feel like think it maybe as an outdated process these days with automation. But I mean, I work for a signage company at the moment, and all of our signs are just fabricated. We have an amazing metal fabrication team, and there's a real craft in it. There's so many really talented craftsmen in Australia that maybe don't get the light that a lot of the fancy, automated furniture has. But there's definitely something there, and designing furniture that lends itself to that is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, with obviously the rise of like social media and things like that, I think a lot of designers are very happy and willing to credit the maker, whereas, sort of maybe a generation ago, they just didn't have the outlet to be able to do that. But, almost every person that I can think of who designs furniture and it's made domestically, they're always giving a shout out to the business or the company or whoever it is who made that work, whether it's a smaller workshop or one of the bigger fish in the ocean.
Yeah, people love like a story too. So when it's like when you go to the farmer's market and you see where the fruit's coming from, the farm. It's the same thing with furniture. It's like people want sort of like the story. It's made in Canberra. It's small businesses doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the modern day as well, we've lost a lot of that. These days so many products are made overseas and in massive warehouses, and not necessarily, maybe not craftsmanship in the same way they used to be back in the day. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably really would pay top dollar for that difference in, having something that isn't necessarily from IKEA, some, slapped together furniture that maybe won't have the longevity of a product you guys create. Yeah.
And that's always, you hit on a good thing there. People like the idea of supporting businesses and brands who have an emphasis on Australian-made products, but obviously it comes with a slightly higher price tag. So it's good that they want to do that. Often it's a you know, you have to almost run like an educational campaign as well, like letting people know why it's a bit more expensive to this option. But I think once they get their head around it and they can see, you know, like sort of hold this tangible thing and see the difference in how it all comes together, they, you know, it usually gets it across the line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd say that's something that I've found, like even just studying design is like my appreciation for things has changed. Like even when I go to like Kmart or something and I see something for $2, I'm just like, how do they make that for $2? Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like who's getting shortcut somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, when you know like what's involved to bring something to market, it's sort of and I went to an event the other night at the National Museum, and one of the guys on the panel was saying like, people don't really know how stuff's made now. Like it used to be like, it'd be like the family trade, like you're a blacksmith or you're a, you know, whatever. And it was so ingrained in like people just understood materials so well, and it was all local. But now, you know, everything's, like you said, it's farmed overseas, and people sort of, there's like a disconnect there. Like people don't really understand, you know, how stuff is made, and, you know, probably, don't appreciate the value because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the amazing thing about learning more about manufacturing processes as well. Like, when I was in uni, I feel like I didn't really aspire to understand manufacturing processes in the way I have now, but now I'm learning more and more about it every day. I feel like I'm really building that connection with how things are made, and I'm really enjoying going around and seeing something in the world and being like, oh, that's made in this process, you know, that's an aluminium extrusion, or like that, you know, and I don't know, you feel like you have more connection to to the objects around you when you can understand how they're made.
Yeah, totally. And that really does go back to sort of like a Bauhaus approach to design, where, you know, you had these designers who were working closely with industry through this Bauhaus model of like individual workshops. And, you know, that's how you got the sort of first bent tube furniture, because like Martstam or Marcel Breuer, whoever designed it first, I think they were inspired by the bent handlebars on their bicycle when they were riding into the workshop that day, and just sort of wanted to figure out the limitations or the opportunities of that process. But yeah, I think understanding how things are made, it's an important thing to you know, like advance a practice.
Definitely.
I was just gonna say, you don't really have a business without it. Like even at Furnished, like when we design a product, it has to like hit a price point, or like it's not gonna sell. So you have to think about manufacturing process, otherwise it's just not even feasible. Like
Yeah, definitely. We where I'm working now, I feel like a lot of the projects we get given aren't designed inherently for manufacturing, and it feels like you're just designing it again basically, because there was just no consideration for it at all. And it's like, oh, you know, like for example, at the moment we're making a terracotta sign, which sounds great on paper, but you know, terracotta is inherently hard to work with, and no one knows how to work with it anymore because it's a lost craft. So now we're trying to find a way to embed, you know, fixings into terracotta and drill into it and cut it and all these different things. And it's like, you know, but the designer who did it, they were just like, oh yeah, just make a terracotta sign, it'll be fine, kind of thing. But yeah, but having that connection and really understanding how it's being made, but understand how to design it in a way that's gonna, you know, be successful and not have a burden on its processes, can be really important as well.
Yeah, totally. And like a lot of the times too, like we're trying to design a wall sconce at the moment, and a lot of the times it's like we don't really understand glass blowing, so we actually went to the glassworks and we had a meeting with them, and we're like, can you guys, it's sort of a collaboration, like you're working with a maker and you kind of you know, learning from them and their expertise. I think that's important too. So if you don't know if it's going to work, chat to someone first. Try and figure it out.
And it's good to figure out those things in an early stage, so you don't overcommit too soon and then take it to, for example, the Canberra Glassworks, and they could look at the design or things that you've done so far and just say, you know, glass doesn't behave in this way, like we can't make this. So those very early conversations are important, I think.
So Terrazzo guy should have called you guys up first before.
Terracotta.
Oh, terracotta, sorry. Terracotta.
I'll show you the logo quickly. This is a great example of, I feel like, collaboration with like a manufacturer in this way. Check this out. Check out how cool this turned out.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah,
man.
cool.
That's awesome.
So this was
Good flash.
a friend of mine who actually used to work with us. He ended up moving on and he has his own CNC. Bought like a $4,000 CNC to do his own little projects. And I knew him and I was like, oh, you want to do a little 3D carving project? And he'd never done 3D carving before, but it was like, let's give it a go. So we worked back and forward. I did it up in Rhino, like the body of it and then the cut lines. And because I have an understanding roughly of CNC from my job, I design the different cuts to make sure that it's going to fit the tooling we're using. And yeah, the finish is amazing. Like it's got its first coat of varnish at the moment.
Wow.
And yeah, I feel like this is an example of kind of what we're talking about, where even though I didn't have all the knowledge necessarily of the rebating and the various processes he was going to use, we worked together in that way to create the final product to make sure it's successful. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's awesome. Oh, that looks awesome, man.
Yeah.
You should hang that up behind you.
Yeah, but I'm in a rental, so I've got to find some design solution not to put holes in the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just to move on from that, obviously the world is the field of furniture design has very much evolved from the olden days, and I feel like a lot of designers, they look back to the design greats for inspiration, and just, I don't know, in some eyes maybe people would say furniture will never be what it used to in a way. With so much done before, how can you design things truly innovative in the market?
I mean, I don't think you can really. Like you can, I can't remember where I read this, but it was like a sort of satirical thing where if everyone in the world sat down at the same time, there'd be more than enough chairs for everyone. So they're essentially getting at, you don't need to make any more chairs. So, it's like an important thing to keep in mind, but I also believe in creativity for the sake of creativity. And obviously like design is just an outlet of sort of like a creative person, I suppose. But I guess to sort of answer your question more specifically, yeah, everything has been done, like we're under no illusions that we're breaking new ground. We're just adding a tiny maybe original thing to a long history of stools and tables and lighting. I mean, yeah, I think in the early days, it can be quite disheartening. Like if you're a bit, sort of fresh out of uni or whatever, you think you've designed this incredible thing and it's so original. And then, you sort of find online or in a book or whatever that, some guy in the 1960s or 70s got there, like 50 years before you did. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're breaking a whole lot of new ground, but I think we're doing it in a thoughtful way and in a way where like longevity is built into every piece as much as we can. It uses good quality materials, high quality finishes, and that sort of combination of things, like maybe as cliched as it sounds, can still be hard to find. You can, if you need, whatever piece of furniture for your house, you'll be hard pressed to find all those things that is still affordable. It's made in Australia. So I think maybe that's where the originality is.
And I think too, with like, we're not interested in just like designing another stool. It's like we always want to put our spin on it. Like even though stool's been done to death, I don't get excited about just designing a stool. It's always got to have something about it that feels sort of unique or our own sort of thing. So I think that's sort of like, even whenever we're designing a new product or this wall sconce at the moment, it's like I want to do something that is different that I haven't seen before. I mean, yeah, even it might take inspiration from stuff that does exist, but it's still at the end of the day has our own sort of flair.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think people can get stuck in the belief that everything needs to be different. But I suppose you could say, sure, there's enough stools from like a functional value, but designing new furniture and creative furniture and new designs in general, it creates culture in the world and it creates history. Like, I feel like it's not really a simple solution just to say we're not going to make anything new and we're just going to use what we have kind of thing, because we'd significantly lose something in culture if we did that, because products have created history.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that sort of goes back to the design is a creative outlet, and I don't think there's anything to be, I don't know, like embarrassed about of wanting to, just put some nice things out into the world, but I think you have to, particularly in the sort of current environmental crisis climate, like you've just got to be a bit more aware of the impacts of the things that you're making and putting out into the world.
Yeah, definitely. That moves on to the next topic, which is sustainability. Obviously, sustainability is a big buzzword in the community, and maybe sometimes not as plausible as society makes it out to be. I feel like one thing I've realized in my job is that a lot of the time it's just not possible unless the whole system changes. How do you guys take a realistic stance for sustainability of just making products that actually will, tick those boxes, kind of thing?
I think for us, it's things that are well made. They're quite simple in how they come together. So, for example, the sort of stance stool or the stance collection, it's all held together with 4 Allen key bolts. So, an unskilled person can very easily figure out how to unscrew those bolts and remove the tops if they're damaged, for example, or they need to get repowder coated. Sort of as few parts as possible.
Locally made.
Locally made, yeah, exactly.
Like everyone who makes our furniture, it's all within like a 3K radius or
about
Really?
like
Wow.
5K radius. Like it's very, there's not much driving around.
Yeah.
Even like the timber that we use to make Humble, it's all like sourced from good suppliers and and unfortunately, like whenever you want to do something sustainably, it usually costs more. It's probably, you can't, like, we don't try to take shortcuts, and I guess that sort of reflects in the end price point. But I think, we just we just want to create the best product, and that's sort of that's sort of a goal we've set for ourselves. And so there's no sort of compromises, like we just do whatever it takes. To get
That's
there.
great.
And I think, you said that sort of sustainability is a buzzword and it's a bit hard to achieve. And, there are so many, like, we're sort of, when I say we, like René and I are designers, you're kind of like right at the end of the line of sort of sustainability. Like long before us, there could be, it's like bigger policy issues that affect, how often offices need to change their furniture over and things like that, or buyback schemes. We can, like do the best that we can, but I think for like really broad change, it has to come from people with a lot more power than us.
Yeah. I think
sorry.
society kind of puts, not society, even like media, news, it puts the idea of sustainability on the individual, which to some degree does have, like, we do have an effect as individuals and we can do things in our life to be more sustainable. But I think, what you're saying does make sense. Like, a lot of the emphasis does need to go back to big business and to, the people creating the supply chains and the processes so that we can have the option of, choosing more sustainable processes.
Yeah, totally. Like, just take like single-use sort of plastic bags at, the major grocery stores. You can sort of like shame individuals who forget to bring bags from home, like those sort of Hessian reusable bags, and they're at the counter and they just, buy or use more of those single-use plastic bags at the counter. But I guess the bigger change in that case would be first like Coles and Woolies just to not supply them, to only supply like paper bags. So I think I think there's a lot of pressure put on, the very like tip of the iceberg to make the change when you've got like 90% of this iceberg mass under the water, and that's where all the change has to happen, not
exactly.
right at the pointy end. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. You're preaching to the choir here, mate.
Yeah.
I'm the one complaining to my girlfriend about the fact that they got rid of plastic bags and now they just charge more for paper ones. And it's like, wouldn't it be cheaper or the same price if they wanted people to use it?
Yeah.
And the paper ones break too. They're
Yeah.
like stuff
Terrible
in there.
design.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. Like, if it was a paper bag with like a lining of plastic to give strength, it would probably be way more successful and last a lot longer than if it was just cardboard. But like, then it's also a trade-off because it's not completely paper. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like in design, there's always these trade-offs. And as designers, that's one of the things I've found really hard kind of bowing down to unsustainability sometimes and just being like, it isn't possible in this situation.
Yeah.
I think too, like if you have that, like it always says on the plastic bags, like reuse it, but like most of the time you probably don't. But if you just had that bag and you just used it for years and years and years, then I mean, you could argue that's a good use of it. Like so, for example, even our furniture, like that's gonna last you a long time. Like they're built well, it's quality materials. Like if you go to IKEA, I love IKEA products, but like let's just say they break after a couple of years, then you have to replace that and buy a new one. While if you just maybe spend a bit more, invest in something a bit better, it's gonna last you maybe even beyond your lifetime. And yeah,
But you've also like, I guess the flip side of that, not everyone can afford to live that kind of lifestyle all the time. And I was, I think about this when I was sort of like in my early 20s in different share houses. I didn't want good furniture, because I was moving around from place to place. It was getting damaged. We're having house parties. So like the best option was to get stuff from, like a recycle, I don't know, in Canberra it's called like the Green Shed. It's like the shop that they have at the tip where they like just pull
Tip
out,
shop.
tip shop, like pull out usable things. So we either got stuff from there or like IKEA stuff. And I think a lot of people use IKEA as a quick shorthand to describe things that are shitty, but they are like very well made in a lot of industrial designerly ways, but they also serve a very real purpose. Like, you can fit out your whole living room for, a few $100s. It's nice and clean and new and whatever. And I don't know, it's like very complicated questions to get your head around.
Yeah, exactly. When you're at uni, it sounds so simple. They're like, just make everything sustainable. It's easy.
Just make it out of mushrooms.
yeah, mycelium.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, obviously design has changed a lot in Australia. I was just before this podcast, I thought what's another furniture podcast? So I watched another one, and they were talking about how in this guy's years in Australia, I can't remember what his name was. Furniture design has gone from non-existent, or even design culture in general was basically non-existent. People moving over to Europe for that, and then it has moved to Australia and has really developed here. What have you guys perceived that? Obviously, you guys are relatively young, but have you perceived that change and that development of the culture around furniture design and design in general?
I think there's certainly a lot more emphasis on it now from what we're told by like the old heads who have been in the industry for much longer than we have. But yeah, you're right. I think for a long time the emphasis was to import designer furniture from North America, from Europe. That's where the big design houses were and brands, and they were and they still are. There's definitely a sort of golden moment in Australia right now to be a designer, and I'm super grateful that we just happen to be born in the right years where we can really benefit from that. But there's a lot of people in the industry who laid a lot of groundwork before us who didn't get the kind of recognition that they probably should have, and or who have like slogged it out like years of really not having much of a career, but they're just getting some momentum in their sort of like later in life. But it's I definitely see like a sort of a definite sort of furniture design industry here. Like in Melbourne every year there's like the Melbourne Design Fair. And there's a real push there for furniture design and even art, and sort of like this blending of art and furniture. We're seeing that a bit more in Australia, like sort of collectible, sort of limited edition design as well being sort of pushed here. But the main thing we hear from our distributors is just like they love Australian product because of just the lead times. Like if you're ordering something from Europe, it's 14, 16 week wait, while we can literally ship something, within 2 weeks, sort of thing. So you can, I think that's more sort of the thing we're seeing. Like the local aspect has advantages in just getting things to market quickly, and even sometimes maybe even being cheaper, because maybe shipping over big sort of maybe upholstered pieces or big pieces of furniture, it's sort of the furniture's one cost, but then the shipping's another. So can actually be more cost effective to make locally too. But yeah, I mean, I think
I think it's a good time to be a designer in Australia. Like both of us have been to Milan, and one thing I don't know I noticed when I went over there was like that Scandinavian aesthetic is so like prevalent. Like you can see sort of why like everyone sort of kind of has that look because you're surrounded with it every day. I feel like being kind of in Australia and so sort of maybe isolated from the rest of the world. I feel like we've got sort of a cool, more progressive sort of aesthetic over here. I think two is also an advantage because then we're sort of getting our own sort of look and style. Um, yeah, I don't know if you'd agree with that. But.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that sort of isolation, you pick and choose what you like from other designers and brands, in the northern hemisphere, and you rejig it and reinterpret it, and ultimately make it your own. And that's just been a long thing that's happened in Australia, I think.
Yeah.
For as long as there have been furniture makers and designers here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes when things are so oversaturated, there's a loss of creativity because it's very as humans, it's really easy to absorb information from various sources. I mean, I even feel like that with social media sometimes. It's hard not to design the things you see inherently just because you're seeing them all the time. But yeah, being separated in Australia, maybe we have some advantage in that way. We can be a little bit more flexible and think a bit more freely compared to overseas. I don't know. Yeah. Advanced manufacturing is obviously a big topic at the moment. I'm guessing you guys are taking more of like the traditional approach to manufacturing furniture. But speaking of the future, do you see furniture design significantly evolving as advanced manufacturing, such as 3D printing and automation, various processes take over? Or do you think there's always going to be a place for this kind of traditional style of furniture?
I think both can live in harmony.
Mm.
Yeah, look, people who work with metal and timber, I guess those are the things that I think of when you sort of say like traditional sort of crafts and manufacturing processes. That'll never go away. They'll always be there. Yeah, I like things like 3D printing. I'm not super across. Like they're definitely carving out a lot more space, but I can't imagine it taking over completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like when you work with a woodworker or a craftsman, like they've got all this knowledge and skill and this sort of understanding of the material that I think maybe machines don't have. Like they're sort of, they're really sort of high tech in some ways, but they're also not in like they don't. You need someone to input things and like so. For example, there's a guy in Canberra, Rolf. And he makes some crazy furniture, but he does it with jigs and all these other things. And like I've spoken to him, and he's like, "Oh, it'd actually be more sort of expensive to CNC this or do this in another way."
Yeah.
Like I think some people like they think CNC's or robotic is sort of the best way, the most cost-effective way. When sometimes it's actually doing it the hand way is actually faster and cheaper. And so I think I think both can work together, and I think it's using technology in ways that's smart and where it's good is will always be needed, but then that hand touch and those other things, I think it's always has benefit.
And I think just sort of 3D printing in particular, like it's very exciting technology, but so much of it just looks the same, just these sort of like blobby lines that are built up. I mean, it's limitless, but it's also quite limiting with what you can produce in an aesthetic sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, who knows in the future? I mean, I kind of agree. I think I really enjoy the older traditional style of furniture, and it's interesting you say that how sometimes people think CNC and 3D printing might create these crazy shapes, but when you think about all this furniture that's created in the 1950s, 1960s, sometimes you see furniture and you think that's insane. How did someone make that? And it's with the most simplest practice technology before any of this automation, and you can get really amazing free flowing shapes without these processes. So I feel like sometimes people maybe get lost by that, and moving back to those processes might be beneficial.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I think too a lot of designing happens sometimes when you're playing with something. Like that's maybe the issue sometimes when you're thinking how the machine makes it, you're missing out on like maybe just playing with the material. And I think a lot of the process and thinking happens in just touching and feeling.
Yeah. As far as your design process, how do you guys work collaboratively on a design, but also what process do you follow to bring a product from ideation to production?
Sort of different for each project.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm a terrible drawer. Like I cannot, and I like that's with like hand drawing and any kind of computer drawing. Like I cannot do any of it to save my life. René is an absolute whiz at it. So we would, I don't know, just we often just like meet up in person, sort of like have lunch, have a couple of beers, and just he'll tell me what he's been thinking about. I'll tell him what I've been thinking about, and like kind of make notes. I'll do some crappy little sketches, and then René will go away and draw it up or render it up, and then we'll sort of potentially make adjustments. But it's but then like René has designed work completely on his own for Furnished Forever. I've designed work completely on my own for Furnished. We've worked together, so it's kind of an interesting brand. Like there's I guess the first few products that we designed for Furnished Forever were the two of us, like a sort of an equal amount of input, so to speak. But I think we have like understood, I guess those products have sort of set the standard for the aesthetic of the brand, and we kind of know how to work to that now. So we still obviously design things together, but we can kind of throw ideas at Furnished independently, and they often stick.
And yeah, it's a good collaboration because like I can do the CAD and manufacturing drawings and all those things, but like sometimes we need to see it or test it. And Elliot, like he can just, he's got access to a workshop. He can just sort of make something and give me feedback like, hey, this joint's not strong enough. We need to update the CAD or. So even like for example, the Humble range, like I designed that product, but like I really relied on Elliot for just because he works with timber all day. Like I would show him like 5 concepts and he would go, oh, that one is going to be really sort of cost effective to make, or it's going to be really sturdy. Like he can just tell because he's worked with the material so much, while I don't have that experience. Like I can sort of come at it from an aesthetic point of view and stuff. But so yeah, that's why I think the collaboration really works. It's very, we're always talking to each other and showing work, and I think you get a better result when 2 heads come together and
Yeah, and it's been really cool. There's like very little ego to it all. Like, I'll show ideas to René that he won't think are that good, and we just we're done with them, and vice versa. And it's just this ongoing thing. Like, no hurt feelings. Like, does it look good? Can it work? Does it suit the brand? Yes, no, and just always moving forward. Yeah, it's a very great attribute of the brand that I really enjoy.
Talking about style, you mentioned developing that style. Do you guys feel like you have a clear style for Furnished Forever, or is it something that you kind of adapt based on the design needs?
I don't know, like sort of style always trips me out a little bit. I guess to sort of throw some like cliched terminology at you. I guess it is sort of like clean and crisp and minimal.
Yeah, it's simple. I'd say it's simple geometry.
Yeah,
like, everything's sort of like circles, square. Like it's really geometric, and I don't even think that was that thought out. I think it's maybe we're just both drawn to those sort of.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find too with manufacturing, like the material sort of wants you to be very sort of geometric with it. Like whenever you chuck in crazy shapes, that's where it like becomes a nightmare to produce.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think you can make very striking and memorable pieces with a million curves in it, and there isn't a single right angle in the chair, but you can have a similar impact just by very like straight lined rectilinear work using very traditional woodworking machines, not relying on like a $500,000 5-axis CNC. I think sometimes just taking it back to the OG tools and the equipment, you can still make a real impact.
Yeah. Moving on from there, I don't know, I've got so many questions. I feel like furniture design is one of those topics where it's so old-fashioned when you think about it. It's founded in craft, but it really has so much potential. And I feel like it's one of those things where it's probably the most integrated with art of all the things you can design, from my opinion. What do you guys think about that? Obviously, you're an artist. How do you found the jump across to design, Elliot?
Oh. I mean, there's like a long history of artists who made furniture as well. I think just I don't know, the sort of construction of things on that size and scale, they do feel quite sort of sculpture-esque, if that makes sense. Just the sort of bringing together of yeah, like materials and parts, and you're sort of limited to take a chair, for example. You know, it has to sort of perform a certain function. A person has to sit in it. It has to be durable. Blah blah blah. Yeah, there's sort of so much crossover. I don't know. It's sort of like a funny question. There are a lot of people who've done it in the past. A lot of people who are kind of focusing on it now, particularly with this new, at least newish in Australia for the last 10 years, but it's been in Europe and North America for quite a bit longer, of kind of collectible design, where commercial galleries are popping up that are focusing just on selling, very luxurious furniture that uses materials in strange and unusual ways, very sort of sculptural, but sometimes trashily, I think they sort of pitch it as like art that's functional, that you can sit on. I don't really like like that line a great deal, but I appreciate the creativity that goes into making those pieces. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely a real coming together and blurring the lines of visual art and furniture. It's definitely an interesting space to be a part of.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know. I think I sort of waffled there for a little bit. I
No,
don't know
that's okay. It's all good. That's what we're here for.
Well,
um,
I even think too, like every industrial designer I know wants to do like everyone wants to design a chair or something. It's
yeah.
like even at university, I remember there was a furniture unit, and like that was everyone's favorite unit. I don't know. There's just something about furniture that I guess people just, I don't know. Maybe it's the scale of it too. It's like has presence. You know, it's such a part of your everyday life. Like even we're sitting on furniture now. It's I don't know. I think maybe subconsciously there's just a connection there
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
people.
yeah, and just to sort of stay on chairs, there's such intimate things, like you sit on them, they like they support your body, they can hug you. The language that we use to describe chairs, it's the same language that we use to describe our own bodies. Chairs have legs and arms and backs. Sometimes they have feet, so we're really trying to like humanize these things, and it's like I think deeply ingrained in people that chairs are this sort of very, like for designers at least, that chairs are this very like iconic thing to design, and if you can nail one good chair in your life, you've had a good life. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really great what you guys have done. Like you're, young designers. I mean, I personally, as a young designer, I've always wanted to, design my own personal products that aren't necessarily through a job or a consultancy, and I'm excited to do that in the future. You guys have made that leap, and you've, got out there and started your own business around it. What advice would you give to other designers out there who are looking to make that jump into their own work?
Advice to give.
Advice. Just do it.
Yeah,
I think
just do it.
a lot of people talk about doing stuff, but I think it's different to actually doing it. And then, so if you're going to do it, like make a plan, like set aside time.
Which is probably something we didn't do. We didn't really make much of a plan. We designed the things, and then we were a bit crazy. We just went a bit like very hard very quickly with the low stand stool, which was the first product we designed. Before we'd sold before we'd had a single order, we got 200 of them made. So
200.
which was
Yeah.
insane. So
Looking back, we're like stupid.
yeah, so we were sitting on like a mountain of stock, but in the longer term, it worked out well for us because it meant that, obviously with, like manufacturing, obviously things get cheaper the more that are made. So we got them at a very good per unit price, and it just meant that we could sell them with a very quick turnaround. So we were getting emails from our distributors of people inquiring about, we need, 10 low stools for this project in this color, but we need them in like 2 weeks. Is there any chance you can do that? And we could always say yes. So I think
Yeah.
that built up good relationships early on.
But yeah, I think too, just like I remember even with the low stance, I think we entered it into, I think it still runs. It's called Workshopped, and it's basically like an emerging designer showcase in Sydney. But I remember like we made a prototype and we exhibited it at that. So I think for anyone trying to start out, like make a prototype, try and get it out there in an exhibition. You know, sort of like test the market, see if there's any interest.
Yeah.
And if you think if you think it's something that is really resonating with people or there's interest, then yeah, go for it. And saying that too, like I'd say really think about why you're doing what you're doing. Like when we made that stool, it was actually really thought out. Like we saw a gap in the market for an outdoor stool, stackable. Like it sort of ticked a lot of boxes that we wanted it to like do commercially. So it wasn't sort of like we weren't just designing a stool for the sake of a stool. Like it was sort of thought out. So I'd say think about that too. Like don't just design a chair, but like think about why you're doing it. Like what are you trying to get out of this? Like, is it a limited one-off edition art chair? That's fine. Or is it something that you want to sell lots of and be commercially viable? Like,
Yeah.
I'd say have a bit of a plan. Yeah.
And I think if you want to go down that route of commercial viability, I think it's very important, and this is something that I didn't do. René was much more across this than me. Just familiarize yourself with price points and what things are selling for what kind of price. You know, like there's a timber stool that sells for this much, or a metal one that sells for this much, or a chair, or blah blah blah. Like that's kind of what the market has, dictated kind of organically. Like that, these are these figures are what people are willing to spend, for like X amount of stools going into a cafe. So it's important to keep that in mind if high commercial output is what you're after.
I think too, another thing I just thought of as well is like, one thing we learnt by doing this is like design's one part of it, but like there's a whole business, like just selling a stool, there's a lot involved in that, like spec sheet, price list, all this stuff. And like we have distributors now all over Australia who sell our stuff, but it's like, it's one thing to have a product, but selling is a whole nother thing. And it's like, you can't just expect, I'm going to design a stool and then it's going to sell like crazy. It's like, it's constant effort. And it's like, even our distributors, they've have our products on their website. They've got maybe product in their showroom, but then there's always new sales staff being hired. And it's like, you've got to keep educating people and keep sort of chasing people and telling people about who you are. So it's a lot of, I'd say you just got to constantly, it never ends. It's like you got to keep pushing yourself, if that makes sense. Like we'll go visit interior architects and, all that sort of stuff. We're constantly sort of, putting ourselves out there, which is a big part of it.
Yeah. And
That's great.
Also it's, I think, crucial to have a good relationship with the people who are making the work, whether it's a metal fabricator, a woodworker, the powder coaters, like even the transport guys who pick up our products and deliver them interstate. Like, just make them like you, because they'll just treat you well in the long run.
Yeah, they're building those relationships with the suppliers and the manufacturers. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really exciting what you guys are doing. What are your long-term aspirations for Furnished Forever? Like, what are you looking to do in the future?
Oh, I guess.
Retire rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know.
Die happy.
Yeah. Just keep on adding to the brand with, I guess a certain amount of dignity. Like we don't want to just keep on putting out, product after product after product, things that we might be unhappy with just for the sake of releasing them. I think Furnished has definitely been a slow burn. Like we've been around for sort of 6 or, coming up on 7 years now, and it's still quite small scale, everything happens just between myself and René. We don't have like employees or anything like that. I don't know, just put out work that we're happy with. I guess that would be the simple answer.
Is that
Yeah.
something you guys are looking to keep? Are you looking to stay small scale, or are you looking to kind of expand and become a proper organization eventually?
I don't know if it happens, like I'm sure it will happen organically at one point. We're not hell bent on scaling up
Mm.
to a point where it's unsustainable or just too stressful for us. Like we each kind of have full-time careers outside of Furnished Forever. Rene's a full-time industrial designer. I've got my own arts practice. So Furnished for a long time, it started off as like a side hustle and then it kind of grew to this thing that demanded a bit more attention from us. And sort of that's where it's at now. But, you know, we each really like our own careers and what we do. So I mean, yeah, I guess taking on employees, that's definitely something that we would do. But
Yeah, I think for us, like we're still doing a lot of the day-to-day running of the business sort of stuff, and like we've got less time. Like I'd love more time to just do the stuff that I love, like designing new pieces of furniture, and
Yeah.
but, like we're sort of stuck. Like Elliot's driving to the powder coaters, assembling. Like I think for us, like it'd be awesome to have some, you know, some people working for us who could take some of that load off.
are you looking for a job?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe not in Canberra.
Yeah. No, we'll pay you a good wage.
We'll take you to Questacon.
Yeah.
No, I think it's exciting as well what you guys are doing because it inspires a lot of other people around there. Like as I said, like I'm interested in doing this kind of thing. At the moment I'm thinking about making my own 3D printed lights. Like I've got this lighting idea I'm come up with like from stuff I've learned in signage, and I'm thinking of like 3D printing it and getting like a workable prototype. But like that kind of thing, like there's all we learn as designers, we learn these skills. Why waste them and just, you know, implement them into a company you work for? Why not do your own thing? And it's really inspirational what you guys are doing. And yeah, keep up the great work.
Thanks, man. That's nice of you
Thanks.
to
Yeah, I
say.
really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And,
Well, yeah, we might leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on today, guys. And yeah, we'll keep in touch.
For sure.
yeah,
No
sounds
worries.
good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Roman.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.